Good evening, everyone. We'll give everybody another minute or two to see if anybody else walks in before we get started.
Okay, that's all. It's such a good now. Wow. That one is over. Look at it. There is a book. Yeah. Now,
We'll get started. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. The fact that you're here tonight to talk about this just shows how invested and how much you care, not only about your communities, but about the education of your children. Just to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, if your child's going through here, you probably do, as I was most recently the high school principal before becoming superintendent. My name is Fran Ciciola. I have over 25 years in education, with 12 of those right here in the Delsea Regional School District. I originally started here as a coach. I was teaching elsewhere at the time. I loved the district. I thought, man, if there would ever be a job that would open up there, that's where I'd love to be. Job opened up. I became the assistant principal. I became the principal of the high school, and now proudly serve as the superintendent of the school. So, here's a quote that's from Winston Churchill, and it says, "Those who cannot learn from history are doomed to repeat." And I put that up there for a reason. As this endeavor has been undertaking about consolidating and regionalizing all of these school districts, I talked to some people with a great grasp of the history of these communities. And I've been told that they thought there were 4 previous attempts to regionalize the school districts. 4 previous attempts and all failed. They had never even gotten to this point before. And we started to talk about, well, we don't want that to repeat itself. What would be different this time? So some of the reasons why past attempts failed. The first one is a lack of communication between districts. And I think that's natural whenever there's a change and there's something new that's being introduced. People automatically sort of draw in a little bit and maybe are a little reluctant to share or reluctant to think what their role becomes if X, Y, or Z occurs. So lack of communication, a lack of understanding of the educational benefits that would occur for students within the district. And they are many, and we will discuss them in some detail in a bit. But there are great educational benefits, and I think sometimes they're overlooked or people don't understand exactly what they are. And the third, it's a big one. It's what you think about when you go to ShopRite or you pay your mortgage, is money. So there were financial implications that really have people negative and block the road to regionalization of the districts. So what changed in that area is grant money. Okay? School regionalization efficiency program. That has helped make this process and the prospect of regionalization more economically viable. So then what occurs is a steering committee is formed. They're members of the different boards of education from each school district. Those board members, just so you know, as community members, gave up their time, read documents, listened to these guys talk. No, just kidding, guys. Listen to the people from Rome talk about different things that we had to learn about ourselves. They put in a great deal of time, and it just shows their investment in the community and our students. And finally, they brought that information back to their full boards for discussion. Full boards discussed it. They thought it was a worthy enough endeavor to be given to the public, so you can look at the facts and you can make your decisions for yourself. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our team that's here from Rome. We have Mark Magyar. He is the Sweeney Center Director, and he developed the regionalization law as policy director from the New Jersey Senate Majority Office. So he was the guy that was responsible for a lot of what's happened in the state. We have Scott Oswald in the middle. He is a former student superintendent, Hollingswood and Oakland, and he was the lead investigator in this study. And on the end is Brian Diamante. He is the co-owner of the Diamante Group. They are a school data and services provider. He is responsible for the finance and operations section of the study. They'll be able to answer a lot of your questions also. So there were two different studies. There was a first study that included Newfield. There is a dispute over tuition cost and whether there is an outstanding balance between the Newfield district and the Delsea Regional School District. Newfield at this time will continue as a send-receive district until at which time there's a resolution to that discrepancy. Upon resolution, the new Board of Education and Community may decide to invite Newfield to become a full constituent member, which I would anticipate would happen, and the Newfield Board and Community would vote whether they would want to join the newly formed school district. So at that point, that is a separate vote, which it would have always been anyway. So when we look at regionalization, what are the financial impacts that are positive? Well, there's a number of positive financial impacts. The state grant money we receive is up to $400,000. That would help alleviate some of the costs involved in this endeavor. The state is also trying to, and that's one of the reasons why this grant money is available, they're trying to eliminate and try to move through some of these smaller districts. So at that point, we would anticipate, hopefully, a more favorable state aid figure in a new regionalized school district, as there's a new formula that starts this year. The elimination of some redundant costs. Superintendent, certain supervisor, facilities manager, some of the shared services that we have between districts now become, one person in that role. Now that could mean that there is some reshuffling, and we'll talk about some of the human resource issues later, but it would eliminate redundant costs. The other financial impact is there's one operating budget. You're no longer doing things 3 times. When a grant is written, it only has to be written once. It doesn't have to be written 3 times. The increased purchasing power when you're purchasing for a larger district is a real thing. And also any professional services that we send out for bid, we have more of a likelihood plus the bigger contract of getting more beneficial costs. The educational impact. I'll take the first two together. Shared curriculum and a vertical articulation between grades. What we've seen is depending on the school that the student goes to, there are positives and strengths of the Elk Township School District. There are positives and strengths of the Franklin Township School District. Well, if we are able to combine what the strengths are, eliminate some of those weaknesses, our students are going to benefit from this. What does vertical articulation mean? Well, that means that the day a student walks in kindergarten, we know where the finish line is for that student in 12th grade, but we can take them every step along the way. There's building blocks and there's steps that are hit to make sure the fact that the 2nd grade teacher and the 6th grade teacher, the 8th grade teacher, the 11th grade teacher are on the same page and understand not only where we're trying to bring this student from, not only where we're trying to get the student to be, but how we get them there. You cannot underestimate the importance and the benefit of what that means to our kids. Some other things. Share educators across schools and specialized programs. There may be 2 people in a building that are experts in an area. When we can share them between buildings, all the kids benefit. All the kids benefit. It's about figuring out what the kids need and who the people are to get them there. That's a benefit we don't have now, but we will have in a regionalized school district. There's increased opportunity for collaboration. Teachers that are able to talk to the person that's going to have their student at the next level that maybe doesn't exist at this point, or maybe isn't quite as cohesive as it could be. And to share professional development opportunities. I say it all the time. We have experts in our districts. There are people in the elementary schools that are experts in certain areas, people at the high school, people in administration. Well, when you can start to use those people for professional development, when somebody that's maybe in the high school can talk to somebody that's in 6th grade and say, hey, here's where I need a student to get to. Let's talk about how we get them to the finish line. Let's talk about how we get them there. Again, benefits for our students. Other advantages. They get to know the buildings. They get to know the personnel. We have some collaboration. We have some crossover. When you're the same district, the opportunities become exponential. They never leave the district for one from start to finish. That means pride. It's pride. I'm not a Franklin kid anymore. I'm not an Elk kid. I don't want you to lose where you came from. But we're all one. There's no more separate. There's no more what you do there. And I hear it sometimes. You hear it sometimes. That's not what it's about. It's about figuring out what the kids need and doing what they need. And the last one is one school calendar, which I know for parents that has been an issue at different times. My older son's off. My younger daughter has school. I'm going through that in different schools. So that's an advantage for parents. Impact on students. There's things that your students are going to see. They're going to see the same school. They're going to see collaboration at events, district pride events that go from kindergarten to when the student graduates. We have one right now that we have going on where our kindergarten students, our seniors are going to be. It's going to be a nice thing. I won't give it away that our high school principal is working on. Those can be commonplace when you have one school. What they won't notice, but will be happening, is a comprehensive academic program that takes them from the start to the finish. The flexibility that we have with teachers and the specialized opportunities. Because if you have a STEM program, we have teachers at the high school because there's more of that at the high school, at the upper levels. Well, wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a high school teacher who's in technology be able to come to an elementary school? Other school business, they're going to introduce something to the younger kids. Things like that aren't available now, but will be in the future if this happens. Impact on staff. This is a big one. I know it's a question a lot of people have. No jobs will be lost. No jobs will be lost because no kids are going anywhere. Kids are staying there. They're not going. No jobs will be lost. It's the same number of students. Your seniority, your tenure, nothing changes with that. Salaries cannot be decreased. We get the one negotiated contract between all of the unions as they become one, and we have a 3-year time frame to reach an agreement on that new contract. Okay, that's a big one. That's a big one, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. What are some negatives? And here it is. Costs incurred over time to get salaries of all 3 districts to the same guy. The studying and negotiating of those contracts will take up a great deal of the grant money. Tax savings, I say savings, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, will be needed to form the new district. And the last one that's there is feeling the loss of history or autonomy. You have 27 board members, now you're going to eventually be down to 9. Okay? So those are some of the negatives or some of the feelings that people have regarding why not to regionalize. Now, this is the big one. This is the question that most people are going to sit and think about is taxes. Okay? Tax apportionment, the percentage of the regional school district's total tax levy to be paid by each community, or who pays what share. So as you see on average tax savings, and I put it that way for a reason, average tax savings, Franklin Township would save on average from 2026 to 2029 $550,000. Elk Township is $173,500. I said tax savings where it reads. That money is not coming back to you. I'm telling you, to be honest with you. Now, that money, depending on many variables, some portion to all of it will be reinvested into the new district. It will be needed money. But the salary guide, the programs that come with it, and the increased opportunities will be based on that instead of a tax increase that it would take at this point to enhance those opportunities. So you probably have questions about this, and you're going to need some more information. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Diamante and talk a little bit about the financials.
Hello. Excellent. So I just wanted to outline the process of how the taxes are digital communities. It's a complicated endeavor to try to project everything out over the next 10 years and then look at how not only the regional district's budget is going to grow for that time and the tax that will need to be apportioned will be growing, but then how to actually split them between the communities involved. So that process is governed by state law, which allows regionals to use one of two methods. You can either use the community's property wealth, which is through implied valuation. It's a state-produced number that is an adjustment for essentially the assessed values in the community. And if you look at that, you're looking at a community's ability to pay based on their property. On the flip side of that, you can also use enrollment, right? How many students are attending the regional from each community? And so you have these competing methods that are available. And there's a third option technically where you can blend the two, right? You can look at both equalized values and the enrollment in the communities, and you can blend those, you can weight them together. So we ran a lot of these scenarios under all the different methods and determined that there are some methods, some of course there's ratios, right, where you're blending enrollment and equalized values that work out for both communities. Ultimately, though, changes to the law that went in 2021 allow for a transitional method where you can essentially pick the most beneficial method that you would like to use for the first 10 years of the regional, and that is what you're seeing here. So after that initial analysis was conducted, we went back and looked at what the most beneficial, we thought would be the most beneficial situation for the communities that would also be acceptable to the voters. And this is what we came up with. So for the first 7 years of the regional, what you're seeing there is the costs would be split 79.4% be paid by Franklin and 20.6% be paid by Health. And that would be a consistent percentage. So whatever the total costs of the regional are, it would get split up based on those percentages. And then for the final 3 years of that first 10 years of the regional, what would happen is we would switch back to using a formula method, which would be 100% based on the property values in each community. And so that ultimately, that ratio computes percentages, right? These shares that would be paid by each community. And so we start to phase in towards that formulaic method. And so what you see in the last 3 years of this chart is that we start to walk Franklin down from 79.4% down to about 77% by year 10, and Health up from 20.6% to about 23% by year 10. And that would get us in 2035 to a situation where those percentages are 100% based on the formula that the state allows, and that's how things would be continuing in the future. These percentages wouldn't be set in stone like they are here, but they would be computed from the formula that's weighting property values. Another note about the savings that you're seeing, 550,000 and 173,000 that's shown there. Those are averages over the period from fiscal 25 to fiscal 29. So that's a 4-year average annual savings. Now those numbers follow their own trend if you look at the year over year, but ultimately it produces about 550,000 average savings to Franklin and 173,000 average savings to Health. Again, these are savings in quotes, as Frank pointed out, because the tax savings, what this number is actually showing you is the difference between what the community would pay in the regionalization scenario compared to what that same community would have paid in that year under the status quo, where all the districts continue separately, right? And so we're comparing two projected numbers in the future and getting that difference. The savings you're seeing depends on cost savings that was identified in the study, right? We're going to consolidate some administrative positions, and that is going to produce some savings. And those savings come off the total, right? That the district needs to levy to the taxpayers. And it will be the decision of the future board of the regional to decide how to best use those cost savings. It could be applied as tax relief, right? And the levy could be lower and taxes could come down, and these savings could be the result of that process. Or it could be that the district is weighing the benefits of new educational programming and decides to rebudget that money and repurpose that money for other things, right? So then the tax savings that you're seeing here don't manifest as you're seeing them, and instead the educational programming of the new regional district is increased. So I just wanted to make that note because it will be the decision of the board on the regional forum to make that decision on how best to use any cost savings that to your.
Just a couple quick points. Delsea regionally is currently operating which we up with a funding formula for Franklin and Elf. That's the property evaluation. That would be replaced in 2035. So what we're trying to up with is not really, like actually say this as we need to and fund 7 to 12 education. The percentage basis that we chose there is by predictability going forward. And if you're thinking about their savings, as Brian said, where they're invested and they're working to revert other tax increases that were incurred, they come back as tax savings. The Franklin Elf numbers are roughly proportional to the enrollment and differential to the population sizes of the district. So it's not that Franklin is saving 3.5 times as much, Franklin's got 3.5 times more. And the idea here was to take advantage of the envelopes. It was written. I know I should have said something that would not have been as easy to do before the regionalization.
Just say a couple more things. I didn't talk about the state aid differences between the two scenarios, status quo and the regional. There would be some small state aid benefits on the regionalization scenario. Again, changes that went in 2021 in that new law allowed for some savings for districts who were losing money under the S2 formula that the state uses to compute state aid for school districts, and about $200,000 to $300,000 of state aid savings would be potentially realized under regionalization. So that's another important thing. And one more note about the taxes. Figures you see here are average annual aggregate totals, right? But how does that impact the individual tax payer? Most people tend to look at their tax rates and the actual taxes per $100,000 assessed value or something along those lines. We have those rates as well. In Franklin, the average is $550,000 of aggregate savings would translate to about an average of about $83,000 of savings per household for a household worth about $190,000. And in Elk, the average annual savings would be about $95. Oh, $83. I'm sorry. Did I think that?
Sign me up. Moving to Franklinville.
Yes. Let me repeat that. We worked. No. Let me repeat that. Yeah, sorry. $83 per household in Franklin saving, and about $96 of savings per household in the way the tax rates work So I just wanted to make that point.
Got that. That's okay. It's been awesome. One last thing is that it is that one last thing is that there are statements that incentives to encourage regionalization. The cost of this study was fully paid for by the state. The cost of the regionalization election will be fully paid for by the state, and I think that's in regional in Monmouth County, which regionalized. It's at 3 districts. July the 1st, received a $400,000 implementation grant and help with cost systems, contracts, etc. From the state in September, in August rather, and I would expect that money will be available to the Delsea if it moves forward and more on regionalization.
Are there any questions for our Rowan team right now?
The $83 and $96 thing only if the board would like to return that back to taxpayers, right? Not reinvest in the district. So if they choose to reinvest that money, we will not see any of that back, but we should not see it, correct?
I'll have to check the tables. But yes, what you said is correct. That those are if the board applies any cost savings tax relief. I believe there may be a chance. I have to look this up. Before I say something, I want to take that. I'll just confirm.
Any other questions?
Yes. We can get
I'm going to repeat your question, what you said.
aligning the that
So the question was aligning all of the 3 different lines, the salary guide to the Delsea guide. Is that in the savings that are shown?
Okay. The study did not include the cost of aligning the assembly. So there's a differential between and the other issues which we recognize. You do not basically the way the contracts work overall. There are 3 years to reach a contract, and presumably you would take time to get to align the salary guide to open more than one contract. I will tell you that we expected that to be the biggest negative point in the Henry Hudson when Henry Hudson was supposed to realign the contract.
For those that, Mr. Magor is speaking of Henry Hudson, that was the last district to
That region
south.
Recently, they actually arrived at a joint contract that moved salary guides provision together, and they did that actually in their first month of operation. I would expect it to take a long time. That, that'd be a reassuring cost as the,
Yeah, until they, yes, it would be a cost incurred until they meet at you know, at the level wherever that is. That's part of the objective at this point. The question was, how does that look like projection wise as far as what the cost is each year? That would be a negotiated item that would depend on any variables, including how many years it would take to get to that. Well, that's what the negotiation would be. That is a very, very exciting.
I'll kind of jump in here. Now you're getting into my section. It's one of the biggest challenges in Franklin right now is the salary gap. Okay? You are below the other districts, statewide, nationwide. We're facing a teacher shortage like we've never seen before. We do part of our studies. We come down and talk to the folks in the district, right? A lot of it is data collection, but a lot of it is also face-to-face talking. First thing that the Franklin folks brought up to us was the ranks of our teachers is a revolving door, right? Teachers come in, they teach a few years at a really low salary, they go down the street, make $10,000 more, right? You're never going to have an excellent school district if that happens. You cannot rise the level of excellence if that continues to happen, right? So that needs to be addressed, whether it's through regionalization or through some other process. Stability within a school district, whether it's teachers or leadership or any of those factors, anybody who works in the school district matters. It matters in the short term, it matters in the long term. Having lived through this in a district where I worked, the best thing we did to improve the results of our students is give our teachers the respect that they deserve across our districts. And in doing so, guess what? That costs money. Here, you're going to realize some savings to help offset that, but ultimately, that negotiations process is going to be up to the Board of Education that ultimately takes those seats. But that is an issue in Franklin right now.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Not that level of smooth like and you're
We have not looked at the scatter grants across the teacher, only because any negotiations that's going to happen, we're looking at probably a couple of years down the road before that even starts.
What grant you guys talk about how long is the grant for, how long paid for. I mean, I've worked for the state for a long time, so the grants run out, the states run out, and get laid off. So obviously the salaries are great right now, but these teachers need to work for 20, 25, 30 years, 10 years. Your state aid is no longer there. You have to make layoffs. I mean, they're long-term things for them. Salary, not bothered now. So anyway, I don't know how long the grant's for, how long the state aid for. A year, 2 years, 10 years. You have to apply for it every year.
The state aid that I was talking about is K-12 funding formula aid. So it's in the state budget every year, so it's ongoing.
And it's new, right?
So I think the grant that you're talking about, that is an SR grant to cover the feasibility study, the cost of the feasibility study, and then the implementation grant that could be applied for following consolidation. That would help the cost incurred, to get the regionalization going. So those grants are a little bit larger, but it would have a total amount of something, I don't know, $300,000, $500,000, something in that range.
That's $3,000-$4,500.
And that is to help cover the cost of like the negotiations and the attorney on legal and all the stuff involved with making that happen. Yeah, the ongoing cost of salaries and all that.
My other thing is that I would help township residents. I still love great things from township. I great things here. Township. I don't see anything that's like, yes, I'm in. Like, my taxes eventually go up. Eventually, there's not my taxes go up, but for me, we're starting to go higher and higher. And trying to go lower and lower. So that's great for them. Not great for the township. The superintendent, I don't have any superintendents in Franklin Township. I don't know how many years. So I don't like I love having this opportunity. My kids are to really have wanting first grade. That's a long time in the township. Also, you said that they'll get into the buildings. Is Elk Township going to go like it's first, second, third grade go here, or because then you said they get into the buildings. I
What else? I mean, I collaborate right now. Share it. That's some was.
I mean, I don't have anything. I love my teachers in Elk Township. I think they do an amazing job. No, I know. I don't need someone to come in, do my lecture or do some kind of people I have already. So, you also said there was going to be no job loss, but there's always going to be one office building.
So that
How do you?
government stage and just over thinking to the office and so or
Louder.
We were having a one-on-one conversation. I apologize. The question was about district level jobs being lost in the case of the redundancy of employment. There would be human resource restructuring, and there would be jobs that may be repurposed. And I don't want to necessarily speculate and say something that would be misconstrued, but in the case of you have two people that do a certain job, in a larger district, there's a little bit more to that job, obviously. So that job could be repurposed. I don't think, and I'm not sure about Frank, I'm pretty sure, but there's no human resource person that specifically does that job. I can speak for this district. Maybe some of these roles sort of shifts a little bit in that direction. So there would be there's places where fact can be trained, but there's also places of need also where people can sort of repurpose their position.
What are the plans for the paraprofessionals? We know at Franklin we are covered under contract with the district and we get benefits for full time. Will that stay?
So at this point, and I know Delsea has done it this way, people that are paraprofessionals in this district that have been here are grandfathered in for what they've always been as Delsea employees. Other paraprofessionals that are hired now are hired through a third-party source. That has not been settled. That would be something you have to discuss amongst the
I just got a quick question about the 10-year window you got up there. Does that take into consideration enrollment changes, property tax value changes?
So the property tax the property value changes, yes, those were estimated and projected 10 years out based on cyclical trends and historical trends over the past 30 years, and the model uses those to project out future taxes. My recollection is that they all start to peak over the next few years and then start to short period of decline, and then they bottom and start to come back up over about the next 10 to 15 years. So yes, those projections are all factored into this model, but the enrollments themselves are not factored in because this is a fixed percentage. So this will govern the cost split between the two communities. It will just be these two percentages that are used, and then by year 10, it's going to be 100% based on equalized value. So enrollments will not factor.
safety how to equalize, valuations on, change, slightly, percentages, the end percentages, figures, change also justice to where, right, I don't see a, the,
Can you talk about what happens to the tax savings if Newfield does not remain a center seat to Delsea?
Yeah, so all of the projections that you're seeing assume that the revenue received, I guess, from Newfield's tuition payment is still included. So the future levies include that as a revenue item, and of those the levies would be net of that revenue. So if that revenue wasn't there for some reason, then yes, the tax levies, the taxes being levied may be different than what was factored in.
How much is that annually?
I'd have to look it up, but I want to say somewhere magnitude of 2 to 3 million.
Close to 4?
Is it close to 4?
Yeah.
First off, I'd like to start with commending the boards for following up. This is the third, this will be the third official consolidation conversations that I can remember. And following up on the previous gentleman's question, not only moving forward, if Newfield is not going to pay what the state indicates they should be paying, how is that going to affect these $500,000 savings you're indicating up there? And more importantly, what are we going to do about the outstanding balance? My understanding is probably around $1 million that's out there, that's outstanding. How are we going to get that money back in? And I take a little bit of an insult. Previously elected official, we want to keep the taxes rates down and save money, but if Newfield can decrease their property tax by 4 cents to their taxpayers, but have a debt, previous debt to Franklin, that's a little bit of an insult there. You should pay your bills before you start giving tax decreases to your residents. So this whole Newfield piece here has a little bit of a problem in moving forward here.
That is a conversation for a different time, and that is a conversation that is on a different level and has nothing to do with what is being talked about here, as far as outstanding balances, wherever that is.
Sir, this is a public meeting. Is there a reason that you want to speak?
Was that no? You're entitled to speak, sir.
You walked away with
I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
yeah.
You think? I didn't hear you.
Sorry. I was a cheap shop on this. Well, not this.
There's a issue in this community that Newfield owes Delsea, not Franklin, Delsea, some body of money. I've heard the number 1.1 million, 1.4 million. I've heard 3 million. I've also heard $800,000. And the last thing I heard is all of this can be settled for $100,000. It's a number that floats around. If it was a true debt, it doesn't float around. The first time the Newfield Board of Education was aware that it owed any money was approximately less than a year ago. But yet the debt, supposedly, has grown over 10 years. Now, I'm not a businessman. If I was, I would not be able to understand how a debt that large grew to that proportion. I didn't do anything of note. I can tell you directly there was no conversation prior to the court beginning of the study at a meeting that was held at the Newfield Board of Education, claiming, and I said claiming,
that there's $1 million out that we owe. I can assure you that there it is not that amount of money out there. Now, how can I do that? I've worked for Newfield for 28 years. I've worked on every single budget, one fashion or another. And if there was $1 million that was somewhere that was being hidden by Newfield, our auditors, their auditors, someone would pick that up and say, wait a second, what's going on? This community is being hoodwinked. We've been excluded from a study that Newfield was asked by the superintendent of Delsea to join. And the reason that happened is there was this ungodly fear that Newfield will take its $4 million and move it to another district. It's possible they did a study, and yet the study that was done with Pittsgrove has never been compared to the study that you now have. I could get at least one voting meeting, if not more. It was promised, but we'll compare the two. We'll see which one is better and let the community decide. That's not what happened. Politics work wonders. Unfortunately, what you hear tonight, based on too many what ifs, and that you live in this state long enough, you know what happens. State all of a sudden vanishes or becomes less, or the district share net loss. You get more money, well, someone else gets less. It works that way in the state of years. I think what the state does, nor am I criticizing they're doing. I understand that after 51 and a half years in this business, retiring 4 years ago, I've seen it all. And I know one thing, that if you're a Franklin resident, and all of a sudden you buy into a regional, your taxes will skyrocket. Because there are too many things that go into that no one talks about. And when I looked at the study, there are things that are missing out of that study that should not be missing out of that study. And one of the things that should not be missing out of that study is that this should be a discussion of 4 districts coming together, all living in Franklin Township and making it a better system. This discussion is in place when one push comes to shove, Franklin School District is not going to do anything except what it's currently doing because it's your financial interest. Delsea, I'm not sure what their interest is. I'm doing this part. That is exactly what it is, because I'm basically, sir. Just to bring everyone up to date, the study that was done, they included Franklin, Delsea, and a Newfield. Under current state law, when you're taking a regional district and you're enlarging it, the first vote that has to occur is a vote by the member districts that does not include the sending district. If we, under the law, Elkin Franklin voters need to approve the expansion of the district, an expansion of Delsea to a pre-K to 12, because there is not currently a member district. Under state law, that vote has to occur first. As a result, I took the original study, which is still there, and it includes a Newfield, and includes an enforcement level with the Newfield included. That would be the apportionment with the Newfield joining the regional is out there. But we're required to put on the ballot an apportionment method for the 2 districts that are currently
the member districts. So it's not correct to say that we took a Newfield out of the study. You could not, at this point, have a single vote that would include Franklin, Elkin, Newfield to create a new solution under the way the current state, under the way the current state law reads. Presumably, the Delsea district and the Newfield district must sit down and reach agreement on what what a debt there is, if there's a debt, what the amount of the debt is between Newfield and Delsea region, reaching agreement between the two districts and resolve that. And then the superintendent earlier indicated the game plan would be regardless of what the time frames are on the process. We always have had two votes with Elkin and Newfield to expand that Delsea to campus flow. And then I'm sorry, Elkin Franklin. And then a second vote that would bring Newfield in from being the SNC district into a full member district in the region. And that would be that is not changed. Right?
And the soliloquy did not include question. I will say this. As you saw me put up at the beginning of my slides, there is a discrepancy between two school districts. There were no accusations made. There was no finger pointing. There's a discrepancy that needs to be resolved. That's how I described it, because that's what it is. That's what it is. It's a discrepancy that needs to be resolved. When people put out that type of divisive nature without even answering a question, I really don't have much time for that. I will tell you that the business administrator at Delsea has offered to open his books and sit down with Newfield to figure out. We've also offered a third party to do that also. Those offers have not been received. I question.
Yeah, you might have said those. You said, the Newfield students including those thousands. Yeah.
As a send receive district at this time.
Yeah. Okay. So that is required Newfield to agree send the petition. Correct?
Yes, under the current agreement.
Okay. So that's all we have. Was there an analysis done without Newfield students? Is it decided to do somewhere else? Pull them out.
And I know in the state commission like education, I would have to prove that it would.
It sounds like there are rats running off from this. You should get them up. So if they choose to send their students elsewhere, which they do, basically, then you should do it both ways. So taxpayers on both sides can see the effect. Make it know what that could be.
Now, currently the Newfield students attend Delsea, right? They can, yes, they do. If you don't know that, they do. All right, so they're already here. Tomorrow, Newfield can't decide to take its kids and send them somewhere else. Right? That there's a process involved there that will have to go to the commissioner, and the commissioner will have to approve. And there are criteria that they have to meet. Right. So, if any of the criteria that have to be met fail, that process stops. Right. Then the Newfield students aren't going. It doesn't. I mean, the reality of it is sometimes it doesn't matter what the community wants. The commissioner has the final say.
Okay, so based on that criteria, if it's a difficult need, or it's something that's very simple. For example, if there's another district that wants those students, because it sounds like it's fiscally area. Is that something that's good, or is your experience it's very difficult?
It's something that's rather difficult to obtain.
Okay.
It is. I'm not saying it's not doable. What I'm saying is there are criteria: racial balance, racial mix of the student bodies. That's probably your biggest factor, right? Others are contiguous districts, like locations of districts, crossing county lines, those types of things, that comes into play. Other pieces are going to be negative impact, financial impact, like an extreme financial impact on one district over the other. Right? Those types of things do come into play.
Next question I have is, what if there needs to be a building that has to be built look at this 10-year period. Okay. In terms of capital costs. This split 70% of large capital costs during split. And exactly regardless of where the building is built.
I think the quickest way to answer your question is yes, it would be split according to the percentage,
Regardless of where the building is built.
regardless of where the building is built. It's a school district building, so it would be split according to the schedule. Yeah, that's a good point. There was a demography study done as part of the broader feasibility study, and there didn't appear to be any need for a new facility.
They built it. You can check.
So if Newfield already has a feasibility study completed with Pittsburgh and it has met the criteria, would it be true that then we would be able to take that to the commissioner and make the appeal to go to another district? Well, I mean, am I understanding that correctly? Based on this gentleman's question?
That's a ball. On the question, I'm going to talk for a minute about a Henry Hudson. Henry Hudson Regional, Mid Islands and Highlands merged. Seabright was seeking to withdraw from the share regional and join the new Henry Hudson National District. The commissioner took 1 month to approve the referendum by Henry Hudson, Mid Islands and Highlands merge. The Seabright application withdraws been sitting on the commissioner's desk for 20 plus months at this point, and the impact on Shore Regional and its withdrawal, which is a negative impact, is the reason that the commissioner is not going to rule on the application and will approve it coming forward. It is difficult to withdraw without a case being made on an educational basis, without based on a history, it would be very surprising if the commissioner were to approve the withdrawal of a Newfield from Delsea, right?
Do you think it would be likely then?
What?
That being said, do you think it would be likely then that the commissioner would continue to have Newfield be a send and receive and pay $4 million a year?
I think that the fact that the districts offer to have Newfield joining a regional and that's in the study anticipates that Newfield joining the regional player would be the preferred outcome.
Okay, but the residents of Franklin and Help would have to vote on that prior to sending it, or prior to that happening. Is that correct? So it would have to be advantageous to them.
It requires a joint vote. But it would be advantageous to have other advantages of having a Newfield seat as a member of the government.
Just one more question. I think to maybe piggyback on what this gentleman was saying was, if it did come down to where the department or the commissioner allowed Newfield to move forward and go and regionalize with another district, would the numbers that you're projecting as a tax savings for the community, wouldn't they change drastically? Because they would no longer have $4 million in income.
It would have an impact, but I don't think that I think it is. I think the likelihood, as as I said, is very, very, very. But to bear in mind one thing that we have a chart and study showing the savings for the cost savings for Elkin Franklin versus the cost savings for Franklin and the Newfield, and the bulk of the cost savings are on the Elkin Franklin side, because they are currently operating. I mean, it does not materially affect the projected savings. Right.
So just to piggyback on that question, so we said there has to be two separate questions. One to kind of consolidate, right, for pre-K-12 regionalization, and then the second for Newfield to join that. Could those questions be one larger questions or two questions on the same path?
If they reach a resolution, if Delsea will reach a resolution, you could structure the question in such a way that they could be on the same ballot. You would have to have the reason that we did the addendum to say just Elkin Franklin is because you would have to show on the Elkin Franklin ballot, you have to show what the apportionment would be with Elkin Franklin and the apportionment where they would help recruit. Like you could do it in the same time.
Correct. And I think the concern that I see here is if you look at that, say, Franklin and Elkin Newfield, in the study, there was a scenario in which all three districts could save money. And there is a scenario in which the questions could go asked at the same night, making it a little bit easier to consolidate three districts that are already going to school together. But instead, that's not happening. So the question I have is, if there is a scenario in which all three districts could theoretically save money, in a scenario where it can all take place in one night, why did they not include Newfield? And I know we mentioned there's a miscalculation or some type of discrepancy for the tuition, but I'm sure that could be resolved before this. My concern is this, and it's pretty difficult. I'm a numbers person. Once you consolidate regionalize Franklin and L, trying to add Newfield, those are not going to work out. Newfield will be a saver, right? Based on the apportionment, whether you do equalize side, whether you do it enrollment, and Franklin L have additional costs based on the apportionment. If you look at the combining those three districts together, Newfield's the big winner, no matter which way you look at it.
I would just echo that yes, there is a scenario where all three districts benefit to Newfield would benefit the most. You're looking at it in tax rate terms and for us.
Good evening. I just wanted to piggyback on some things that were happening up there. I'm the superintendent at Pittsburgh, and we have a viable feasibility study. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on that. They asked, is that a scenario? And yes, it's a very recent scenario, and we're still willing to talk about that. But I wanted to clear up, this isn't a situation where it's a what if. We actually have a feasibility study that was conducted, and we waited with the Newfield community to see how this turned out tonight. And so, obviously, I just wanted to have everyone here understand that that was completed. The criteria that the gentleman in the back asked about have been met. And it was beneficial for Newfield to come to us at that time.
Good evening. It's my understanding that Elk Township currently has a pre-K 3 and 4 program. I don't know if that's through the state. that many other districts look like have. Franklin does not have that program. It's also my understanding that Elk is leasing property from Pittman and has that program. So what would the infrastructure of that look like for Franklin residents and the population of our 3-4-year-olds? How would, is it possible for that grant to be expanded to accommodate the rest of our residents, children? That would require teachers and space. And that is a big question. Would it turn into a lottery versus, I'm presuming all of Elk has access to that currently? So what would that look like? Have that been taken into consideration?
So right now, neither district in its own right now has the space for a pre-K program, right? For the pre-K program. And for those who don't know or aren't familiar with this, New Jersey started several years ago offering preschool expansion grants. They are grants that offer universal preschool to families with 3 and 4-year-olds. Most of the, I would say, hurdles across the state are one of facilities. It's not necessarily the money that comes in for the preschool program, and having lived this and done it and written several of the grants, pays for the program. So that does not really have a tax impact. In fact, it does not have a negative tax impact. I will tell you firsthand, my experience with it had a positive tax impact because you are able to spread some of your resources across the grant as well. Right? So some of the money you may be paying a principal now can be put into the grant that maybe previously wasn't in the grant. Those types of things, custodians, nurses, anything they share. Right now, Elk has leased space from the Pittman School District for one of their schools. Franklin does not have that preschool program right now because there's no space. So it would require that any new regional district Franklin is eligible for that. They're eligible for the preschool expansion grant. They don't have the space to do it. So any new regional board, any new regional administration would have to go out into the communities and investigate where space exists. There are spaces you can partner with private preschool providers. It's difficult to do, but it can happen. You can partner with some Head Start. That can be challenging to do, but it can happen. And then you can go out and look for other facilities that exist. In my case, we placed our preschool into a former private school that had closed down. We revamped the private school, paid for the grant, right? Paid for through the grant. We revamped that private school, did the work that we needed to do to make it preschool ready. So those facilities, looking for those facilities throughout this large community, would be the job of the new Board of Education. Both communities right now are eligible for that.
I have a question of complete ignorance. I'm curious why salary differentials would not have been included in a study like this when that is probably, in my limited experience, the most significant cost factor with this proposal. So I want to understand why breaching that gap in salary has not been studied or made a part of, because as a taxpayer here, I find it hard to believe that we'll be saving any money when we have, historically low salaries in Franklin Township and somewhat competitive salaries at Delsea. I don't know what Elk Township salary scale looks like, but to bring those, to close those gaps and to make that happen seems to me that it would have a huge impact on whether or not this is feasible.
Yeah, but I just want to reiterate one thing about the savings that you're seeing is that you have a status quo rejection in these sort of maps and these hated things as well. That looks at if the districts continue operating as they are currently, what's the budget going to be in the future, right, for the next 5 years, and what are those costs going to be? So contract expiration, right, renegotiations, those are all things that are going to happen in the status quo as well in the individual districts. So those are unknowns, right? And that's the main problem with doing that sort of study when you're doing it 2 years out. It all comes down to negotiation.
I can understand the future, but You know now that Franklin Township on step, Franklin Township on step, Franklin Township on step 7, whatever, I'm making this up, makes $8,000 less than Delsea does on step 7. You could use current figures to at least have an idea and show the people here what that cost will be, because that is going to be a huge factor.
Yes, my understanding is there's many ways that negotiations go. Using the highest guy is the way it can work, but other districts have explored other methods, right? Weighted averages, all sorts of other things. You can align the guy by not just paying everyone, right? You can be moved around the guy. So it's a complex process that, yes, we could make an attempt to give cost, but there would be no certainty. I couldn't put any degree of certainty that those costs would be the way things play out.
And the assumption would be that, you're not going to compare against the assumption that there's no negotiations between Franklin and its own with some of that teachers. There would be like increases in negotiation in there as well. And like, as you know, you're often any negotiations, but taking into account what other districts are paying, when there's negotiations and the superintendent.
First off, thank you for taking the time this evening to answer our questions. This is a question kind of directly related. I'm sorry, ma'am. You were the superintendent in Pittsburgh. I have a son in the 6th grade. My intention when I moved here was to stay in a particular school district from start to finish. And one of the things I've been subjected to for the past year is rumor that my son could end up in Pittsburgh School District before he completes his term, which I expected to be at Delsea High School. But I prefer to not deal with rumor and deal with officials. Is there a realistic scenario right now where my son would end up in the Pittsburgh School District? Is there an actual discussion, and that's a possibility? And if it is, in terms of years, would that be in?
Well, we find out you can do your thing, so I was going to bring up my like there.
Sometimes team ability, you podcast in place here that I want to not say that's not on her day.
All right. I have a question here.
I think
So I'm going to start out with Delsea Red. I grew up in Oak Township, sixth generation in Oak Township, all district in town. So my concerns are, purely being concerned about how Oak Township is going to be represented in all this. Currently, I know quite a few of the school board members on the Oak Township School District School Board. And I know that the Franklin Township School Board members would have the best interest of the student at heart as well. Currently, Delsea Regional School Board regulates the Delsea Regional School District, so Delsea High School and Delsea Middle School. Both of them have buildings that are built in Franklin Township. Before the middle school was built, we're a minority partner in the school board for Delsea Regional High School. So that means we have fewer votes, which means that we can be outvoted in most of the issues if that's the way they choose to vote. So that's a concern of mine going forward, that our tax dollars are going to be all put in one pot, and there's going to be 3 different buildings, and one of them is going to be in Oak Township, and 2 of them will be in Franklin. My other concern is that you have students that go to Elk, you have students that go to Ritter, and you have students that go to JMU. I come from a large family of teachers. My mom taught in line, and on a somewhat regular basis, they evaluated how students were performing, and based on those results, students would be pulled and put into different schools. If that were to happen in our township, that could mean that my child could be moved over to Franklin Township School, upgraded from where he's at. It's a large enough shock. I went through it as a student, going from a small school district of Florida, dropping in and regionalizing to Delsea. And I had some problems with adjusting to that. So, taking young children, uprooting them because we want all the school districts to function the same is a huge concern. We did the original regionalization plan, Elk leaves. We lose everything. We wanted the middle school to be built up. That didn't happen. And my last concern, and it goes back to the Franklin Elk thing, traditionally and historically, Franklin Township puts their school budgets down, and Elk does not. We had, when I was in high school, there was a thing to rebuild the track and the field out there. There was a government grant or a state grant, I believe $50 million, and got put out to a referendum. Franklin Township residents voted no. Elk Township voted yes. And as a result, it wound up happening anything, but the Delsea Regional School Board voted the entire bill. So my question is, how can you guarantee me as an Elk resident and a father that my best interests will be represented in an unfair border, because we're a minority partner? How can my interests best be protected if we go to this type of regionalization?
I mean, you're already entrusting your children throughout a send to a grade into a Delsea region. And there's not a situation where somebody takes where you do not need. Obviously, we're at shortage space to fruits. I mean, I can have I would add a significantly plus. Get you a pitch from ultimate record. I can imagine the work.
Good evening. My name is Jason Elliott, Franklin Township president. I've listed you guys in the room for anybody who doesn't know me. I'm also the president of the Franklin Township School Board. I also participated in the steering committee, put the study together. And I'll go further a couple questions I have. I've also participated in multiple contract negotiations during the course of my tenure on the Franklin Township School Board. So, I have 4 questions. The first one, just for clarity for Brian, the tax savings is proposed here. Is that the annual savings between the 3 years, or that's cumulative savings for years?
And I
So over the course of 3 years would be $1.6 million for Franklin.
over 10. Yeah.
Okay, so that was my understanding of what it's like, but that's beneficial. So just to clarify, that's an annual $550 million savings per year.
For a year. Yes.
3 years, right? From 26 to 29.
Not per year.
My next question to follow up to Mrs. Heenan's question and Mr. Schrader's question regarding the reconciliation of the salaries. Without having calculated what that's going to be or a projection of what that's going to be, we actually have no way of knowing what the potential tax increase could be incurred as a result of that. Is that correct?
Is that
I was just saying, it's my understanding that that is a much deeper study that would be conducted. To get you all those stickers.
Oh, so that would be done prior to the project being up a bit. The present, that would be impacted
Before the regionalization move?
correct.
No. It would be during the
So, if I said that it's going to cost Franklin enough taxpayers an additional $2 million a year to reconcile those contracts, you really have no way to contradict that or confirm that, correct?
I have not looked at it.
I mean, I assume you're going to be negotiating if the districts are remained apart. If there was no regionalization, Franklin is going to be negotiating contracts and raised teams anyway. So this is not compared to a zero sum where there are teacher increases if there are teacher pay increases if the regionalization occurs, and there are no increases if there's no regionalization. I mean, it's basically you're be negotiating contracts in any case, and there are different ways to. I mean, the negotiations made up giving different raises at different levels as opposed to across the board. Different ways that do this, but it's not. It's not in isolation as if there could be no contracts negotiated if you remain apart, and there would be contracts negotiated.
So again, if I'm the district operator, it's going to cost taxpayers $2 million to reconcile these contracts. We have nothing to contradict that currently. Correct, thank you. Second question is, when you did the demographic study, you're making an assumption of black population about across the communities indefinitely. Elk Township has land unit development at over 2,000 units that are approved and could be built at any given time. Franklin Township has recently settled with affordable housing litigation, which resented some property in Franklin Township to accommodate upwards of 45 iron units. Have you done any projections if any of those projects are built in the next 10 years, what effect that would have on Franklin Township taxpayers or other Elk Township taxpayers? Your perspective of where those units would be built and the massive increase in population.
What we do as part of the demographics is look at projected building, projected construction. That we go through the township and borough tax offices and construction offices, and we ask them for that information. All that information is included in the study. So if you have additional information that they're not providing to us, then that's not something that we can control for. Right? We've gone through your municipal offices to get that information. If they're not providing it to us, I don't know why they wouldn't, but that's all part of the study.
So there's no projections for any increase in population across the communities that are included in this study?
There's no projections. There are projections there are enrollment and population projections in the study. Several.
But they're essentially remain flat over the 10 years, right?
But that's the information that we're going to get.
The last question is in fact the districts were to consolidate, what would be the base budget initially, and how do we know where that's going to be as it relates to Ross like the 2% cap? The districts are allowed to raise. What would the base budget be, and what would happen in Franklin? I don't speak to Franklin. We have a significant bank cap. What would happen to that bank cap that we achieved there for the past 5 years? Trip, I think you said you don't have it. We did. They started that, but what happens to any unexpired bank cap, and what is the baseline budget?
I can answer They spent about 35 million for the first couple of years, and then it crossed over 36, and then moved up towards 37. So part of the projections increased by 5%. Yeah.
Was that base budget made up of adding individual district budget together?
Yeah. Inflated by 2% and accounting for the long-term debt.
And then each debt service is absorbed by
The debt service gets combined, into the regional and absorbed by bulk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Delsea Regional Organization. My name is Jay Hughes. I'm the director. I have long standing stake in this district. I walked in that front door in the fall of 1960. Wow. Myself, younger brother, sister, 3 children, grandchildren, daughter who worked here, taught. I have heard some disturbing things. First of all, Mr. Sissiola has oriented us in certain things. We're not supposed to be part of this discussion this evening. It should have been for another discussion, another evening. I think we can all appreciate that. I look around here and I see many members of the steering committee. We all work long and hard. We deliberated long and hard. You like to take your member of the fact word to late resident of Franklin Township, just like I am in Delsea Township. We have a great stake here, people, just like all of you, all the taxes that you guys pay. Remember the Elk Township Board of Education? I completed over 48 years because we used to be seated for on our board in late February and May election. I don't know where Mr. Brad over there, the president of the Franklin, got his numbers throughout housing development, but I can set the record straight on that. Besides being on my board of education for those years, I lost track of how many years over the time I served as president or vice president. I currently sit on the Elk Township Joint Municipal Land Use Board, which combines planning and design boards. In Franklin, you have 2 separate boards, either as permissible. Currently, something that's come to and before the community of Elk Township about development. These gentlemen had no idea it was coming down the pipe, nor did we. They did their stuff. They could only work with what they were given. And I can assure you, without question or exception, they were given correct data at that time by the fine folks that worked for our municipal government. A portion of Elk Township, I don't remember how many hundreds of acres it is, was designated by the township to need redevelopment without condemnation. Which means the ground could not be taken. It was a legal step in the process to allow a developer, or a redeveloper, this step there. They had to designate a redevelopment. That was the housing company DR board up on the New York Stock Exchange and see what this thing said. They have chosen to be themselves to be the developer. This is a senior citizen age restricted community. Greatest part. Don't hold me to these exact figures, but I think there's 962 total units. 270 or 60 or 80 some apartment houses. The apartments, townhouses, condos, buildings. The rest will be age restricted. Now that means school children won't be coming out of that unless, like we all know, happens and then you found it nowadays.
Grandmom and granddad may end up raising the grandchildren. I have a friend, my wife and I, she has raised 3 of our grandchildren. This is moving, and it is moving our regular course. I think December planning board would be like this plenty where they could be out. Various approvals to keep this moving forward. We're not high enough to think that there won't be some key sugar possibly potentially come out of the age restriction. We don't have a projection how long it will take to out. But it's our vast amount of farmland going to roads toward Richmond. There's water and sewer just up the street. They're bringing it down there too. We didn't ask for this. It has visited us. It is within the parameters of the law. Unless you want a developer's lawsuit, people are within the parameters of the law. Your good legal representation of your board will tell you this is what you do, or else you post your tax return. They will be money. Now, I share preliminary at the steering committee. I gave approximately the same numbers, and I didn't have more exact, and I don't have it in front of me. The entirety of this document fills up 3 banker's boxes. Beside the banker boxes are you need a hand truck and move. Now, let's try to be argumentative here with the anything, but I'm just trying to state what's happening. And anybody wants to come out and yell couch any more meetings ever ahead of public meeting. We also have here, I want to thank everybody that was on this steering committee. I love the hard work they put in. Many of us have visited this many times in the past. We lived in 28 years of split sessions. We lived through an act of the New Jersey legislature to fund the construction of the middle school building in the back, and then the establish ownership and etc. These are all things that happen. I have heard some things here tonight that I heard word twice used. The individual, and I will not call out my name unless you want me to, he was the one who was being twice, because all the people that have worked with this committee have tried to work together for a good solution for all children, for the Delsea Regional School District now and to become. People said it's Franklin out. It's not Franklin out. Yes, that's where we live. In the mighty small town. They up this stretch from Downtown Airport, unexpected wildlife refuge, all the way around with the 4-H fairground would reach 77 hours. It's one hell of a large piece of land. But I'll think of a common mindset. Think together and try to make this better for everyone's children. That's the reason I continue to do what I do. A lot of these other folks do too. Anybody have any other questions afterwards? Let me later. You don't. Not like respond.
All right, well, just wait 1 second, Jason, please. May I? I think we're getting off track here. Here's what I want to know. And I've sat on this committee as well, on the steering committee. I've been on the board all through 20 years. It's the 3rd time I've been through this regionalization, right, Mr. Patch?
Correct.
So we understand the complications and the fears of all this. Here's what I want to say. And a comment to the young ladies in the back discussed about how you take step 7 and put it in step 7. Our guys are so different that somebody on step 7 may not have the same years of service as Delsea step 7. It's so convoluted. I wish we could come up with a number. There's nothing we want to do more, and we do want to give our teachers more money.
And anybody that's sitting in this room and thinks that our teachers in Franklin are making enough money, they're not. They're incorrect. The other question I have, before Newfield is able to, no disrespect to Pittsburgh because I know it's a great district, before Newfield can make that decision, does the community have to vote? There's the answer to that. So, it's kind of a moot point. The gentleman in the back was a child at Newfield. You're going to have to vote pro or con on something like this. We're getting really off target about this issue. So I wasn't.
All right, so again, we've had a lot of questions, and I'm sure we have more. There are a lot of people here that have heard what they need to hear. So what I'm going to do is one or two more questions. We are going to wrap up, and then we are going to stay around. Financial people are going to stay here. The educational people are going to stay here if you have educational questions. Board will be here if you have community questions. So please, if you have another question, make it a question, and please direct it to the question. Thank you.
Two questions. The first is, if you regionalize schools and it necessitates the relocation of students from their current schools, what does that look like? Which students or which schools, like where are you allocating these kids to? So Elk's going to stay in Elk. You go to Franklin's down to say Franklin College. So you're going to combine this one curriculum. Okay, so what do those curriculum costs look like? So Elk has one ELA program, Franklin has another. So what does that cost look like if we're going to go with Elk or if we're going to go with Franklin? What does that cost? And is that in this diagram here?
Excuse me, there is, once you look at 2 school districts or 10 school districts all using different curriculum, right? You have to, before we can kind of come up with a cost analysis, we have to figure out which curriculum they may move to. It also is not going to change in a year. You're not going to redo every bit of curriculum over the course of 1 year. So those types of things and curriculum revisions are built into school budgets year over year, right? There's probably not a year goes by at Delsea that there's not some curriculum revision going on. Same thing in Elk, same thing in Franklin. So that takes time. That's not necessarily going to be different than it is today. So will the curriculum come together? Yes. Is it going to happen the first year the district opens? No.
Absolutely. But what does that look like over this 10-year window? If that included in this supposed savings?
There's nothing about changing curriculum. The idea of aligning curriculum is covered heavily in here. The idea of the cost to change curriculum is a cost that would have been there regardless. Over the course of years. In 10 years, where you're an Elk person or a Franklin person, Franklin, in 10 years, Franklin's going to look at new curriculum for ELA, for math. That's going to happen.
So that's not going to change for any of us for 10 years from now, even if we regional the time?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
Over the course of 10 years, if everything stays the way it is today, state standards in New Jersey are going to change. By law, they change every 5 years. Elkin or Franklin is going to align its curriculum to those state standards. That will require curriculum revisions. That may well require changing a curriculum program. Those costs are going to be realized over 10 years, likely over 5 years, right? Those costs are going to be realized whether you stay the way it is today or you move to a regional district. If you move to a regional district, you're buying more of those programs spread out among more people, right? Spread out among more taxpayers. You're probably getting better costs on the better prices on those programs because you're buying them in larger quantities.
Probably. You know that.
Well, I don't know what the cost of bread's going to be in 10 years either, right? So I can't predict that.
Do
I know what? No, you have to ask the business administrator what they spend per curriculum and all that.
One more. Somebody has a question. If anybody did not go, this one didn't have a question. You were patient.
Hi, I'm not the Refill President. Still on that. I'll come on. So I'm really quick. Well, so I had to Frankville. People in Frankville, because they're there and successful. That way, once it's fall out. Starting to get elected. So I'm focused on learning all the places, all the details.
I came here tonight because I looked at the studies was going to show things for you because advertising throwing around Facebook everywhere. Was that was pushing this into regionalization? And I thought kind of horrified when I noticed on the advertisement that finally came out that we were not. So I'm kind of curious, was there a notification you built sooner that because our financial state is not amplified for it that we were not this regionalized, or was that just okay, study's done. It's like part of it and they feel like they're attacking you rather than
I'll take that. At steering committee meeting during the summer, it was decided, and Newfield was present. That at that time, we were working towards resolution of the situation, and Newfield at this time would continue as a center seat until the point of resolution, with the hope that by the time a vote would come, that issue would be resolved. So that's the hope. By the time the vote, that is still a hope. That is still a hope. I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't want to see Newfield here, and I don't think Newfield does want to be here. I think it's just there's some things that have to be resolved. All right, so let me explain to you kind of where we go from here. You've been given a lot of information. There's going to be a lot of talk. You're going to discuss this with people you know, and that's going to happen. The boards will be convening and deciding based on tonight whether they want to push forward and petition the commissioner to put it on the ballot. If it is put on the ballot, it would go to a vote, and that's when you get to speak your part and either vote for or against. We're looking at January for that ballot. We're looking at January for that ballot. As I mentioned, we are not going anywhere. We will be here, but those that maybe, are fine with what the information they receive or don't have something specific they want to ask, are welcome to go. The financial people will be here. We have people from the educational side of things, and we have board members if you have community questions, and if you need to discuss some things amongst yourselves, board members, if you talk about things, that's fine too. The main thing I do though is I want to thank you for coming out tonight. Like I said in the beginning, it shows that you care, shows that you're passionate, and no matter what side of it you're on, you care and you're passionate. So I want to thank you. Everybody have a great night, and thank you for coming.